Gentlemen, this is the question on everyone's mind. Level 2 or 3 Sentry? Thankfully, UncleDane has an answer. Let's get into it. There's our hero.
Spencer going up.
Is this like the official UncleDane intro? I just feel like I'm learning. Yes, it is.
Well, I guess that'll do.
A lot of you guys in the comments section ask me,
UncleDane, what is the difference between level 2 Sentry and level 3 Sentry?
good question. Let's start
I actually don't know the answer to this, so that's good.
off by looking at the damage stats for each level of a sentry gun. Get ready for some super complicated math.
Ah, bamboozled again. Can't do math. I was in the army. I was told walk direction, point gun, bullet come out small end,
So a sentry
big end in shoulder.
gun fires bullets and each bullet does damage. And all three
Okay, with you so far.
levels of a sentry gun fire the same type of bullets, meaning each individual shot does the same number of damage no matter what distance the target is from the sentry and no matter what level the sentry gun is. One sentry bullet does 16 damage. Now, a level 1
Just want to point out that that's not the bullet, that's the whole round. The bullet is just the part on the end that actually shoots out of the gun. The casing holds the powder, and in the back is the primer.
sentry gun will fire 4 of these bullets per second, which means a level 1 sentry gun does 64 damage per second, or DPS. Now, a level 2 sentry gun fires the same bullets, but twice as fast, so that means that it's now firing 16 damage bullets at 8 rounds per second, which means that a level 2 sentry gun has a DPS of 128. Now, here's where the difference between level 2 and level 3 sentry guns begins to become apparent. When it comes to a level 3 sentry gun, the bullet damage as well as the firing speed is no different than the level 2. Yep, that's right. A level 3 sentry gun fires bullets at 8 rounds per second, which means that the DPS of a level 3 is 128, just like the level 2. However, you may be fully aware that a level 3 sentry gun also shoots rockets. These rockets fire once every 3 seconds, and the damage can range between 50 and 150. This damage is affected by fall-off, but weirdly enough, it's calculated from the distance of the engineer to the target and not from the sentry gun
Wow, that is really a bizarre quirk that could make a huge difference.
itself. Sentry rockets obviously add to the overall DPS of a level 3 sentry gun, but considering that 1, the rockets fire every 3 seconds while the bullets fire consistently, 2, the rockets do inconsistent damage depending on where you are in relation to the enemy, and 3, the rockets aren't guaranteed to hit the target it's aiming at. Rockets fired by a robot are less accurate against moving targets because it fires at where the enemy is currently at instead of where they're going to be. If you've ever played Soldier, you'll know that the further you are from a target or how fast the target is moving, the more...
Okay, wait, let's talk about, well, the real mechanics of warfare and of DPS. So, what is DPS a relevant factor in military operations? The answer is, for ground combat, almost always no. They only want rounds that can be one-shot kills. This is, of course, ranges from the 9mm round in the sidearm all the way up to 155 and tank sabot shells. All of these are designed to ensure that you don't need to shoot more than one to kill an enemy. Or sorry, not to kill an enemy. This is another important distinction. Killing an enemy is a secondary side effect to the actual objective, which is to render them unable to continue fighting. That's right, if the military had a cheaper way to just sort of get the enemy army just like high out of their minds, so they would just sort of hang out and chill out for the duration of the war, they would do that if it was cheaper than shooting bullets. Of course, shooting bullets is the best way to incapacitate an enemy military that we found. So, when we look at the individual service rifles for the first, well, when the first repeating rifle started to enter service before World War I, you saw that the commitment was to train soldiers to fire in sort of volleys, but to do massed fire, and the expectation was that they would be firing at other military forces, sometimes a long way away, a kilometer or more. So the rounds were more or less to whom it may concern type rounds. Technology wasn't there, honestly, at that time to support individual repeated fire, sort of like suppressing fire is what we think of it now, not on an individual level. by World War II, you started to see some sort of repeating weaponry. You saw machine guns that could actually deal suppressive fire. And I guess this is one of the key distinctions, is that a machine gun or a M4 or a series of M4s shooting at an area or an enemy will incapacitate them temporarily, even if they're not getting hit. And that is because the feeling of rounds being shot all around you is pretty scary, and it will ensure that that enemy gets behind cover and cannot poke their head out to return accurate fire. That is pretty fundamental to military operations, and that happens at scale. A artillery company, for example, can bombard an entire battalion and lock them in place where they are unable to get out of their foxholes if they're pinned down by a steady barrage of artillery fire. So the point of all this is to say that what you can fit in a soldier's hands has evolved over time. There has been a bias towards volume of fire, and the emphasis is not directly about killing the enemy, though every bullet and round is lethal. The emphasis is on suppressing the enemy, being able to then use that fact that they are stuck in place to either maneuver on them to finish the fight and kill or incapacitate them, or to pin them in place and then use larger weapon systems like artillery or aircraft to destroy, to finish the job, so to speak. All this to say that when you see a rapid fire weapon, the expectation is not that a 30 round magazine going out of an M4 is going to kill 30 enemies. No one thinks that's going to happen, and no one wants that to happen. The idea is that in a situation where two armed enemies come at each other, that because your weapon is semi-automatic or fully automatic or burst fire, that you'll be able to fire so many rounds that even if the enemy had the same number of weapons, that they would be suppressed by your superior rate of fire. And once that suppression is achieved, then you can begin to either maneuver or finish the fight with external assets.
Or you'll have to adjust your aim to get the rocket to land in the correct spot. Sentry guns don't know how to do this, so most of the time that a sentry fires a rocket at a moving target that's a fair distance away, it's pretty unlikely that the rocket will actually hit. Rockets can also be blocked by your own teammates, so relying on the sentry rockets isn't really a thing. So if we're looking at consistent damage output, a level 2 and a level 3 sentry gun are very, very similar.
Okay,
both fire bullets
really
at the same
important.
rate for the same damage, both even have the same amount of ammo capacity. The only difference is the level 3 gets rockets, which do massive burst damage, albeit a little less reliably than usual. Next, we could look at the difference in health between the levels of sentry guns. A level 1 has 150 health, a level 2 has 180 health, and a level 3 has 216 health.
This is a good point, actually, about the sentry guns, is that the weight of ammunition is a huge factor for military operations, not just for soldiers don't like to carry heavy ammunition. That is certainly true, or rather, soldiers can carry more rounds for the same amount of weight, but also logistically at scale. When you're talking about ships and containers full of rounds, a 33% smaller, all other things being equal, can be shipped 33% more efficiently, i.e., 33% more rounds. So when you're talking about equipping a brigade, when a ship pulls into your port in combat with 1 million rounds in a shipping container or 1.3 million rounds in a shipping container, you're talking about a tremendous difference. And that's why you see rounds sometimes get smaller over time. It's not because they are less lethal. Again, if you get shot basically anywhere with a full-sized round, you will be incapacitated. You will be out of the fight. Whether that's your arm, your leg, your head, your torso, even your foot, you will be out of the fight for some time. And that's the only objective. So it's worth pointing out that you always have to weigh that, automatic rifles burn rounds at a faster rate. So you have to ask yourself, okay, how fast is this weapon burning rounds? how many rounds can my soldiers carry, and how many rounds can I, as a logistician, for example, supply them with. Those are all factors that go into the selection of a specific round for weapons.
So a level 3 has 36 more health than a level 2, which doesn't seem like much, but it actually can make all the difference in the world. A level 3 sentry gun can survive 2 direct rockets, but a level 2 cannot. A sapper takes 1.5 seconds longer to destroy a level 3 sentry gun than a level 2 sentry gun. Sticky bombs are pretty difficult to predict the damage of, but an extra 38 damage needed to destroy it certainly does help. Extra health means it can fire for longer, and considering it only takes 1 second for a leveled sentry to do 128 damage, every second spent alive can definitely count. Next, we can talk about something that everyone wonders about: size. Is it better to be bigger or smaller? Because believe it or not, every level of a sentry gun increases the size of the gun by a little bit. And
That's
in
a good point.
TF2, size does certainly matter. As a sentry gun levels up, it gets bigger. But that also means that the hitbox of the sentry gun increases in size as well. The smaller the sentry, the harder it is to hit, even if it's
That's a really good point.
very slight. But more importantly, as the gun levels up, the barrel of the gun gets slightly higher, which you can use to your advantage when placing the gun behind lead.
crafty. I've played that map and been in that situation and put a sentry right there, but I never thought to put it just at barrel level.
Ledges. Hiding the bulk of the sentry gun behind a ledge, but allowing the top of the gun to peek over it, can be pretty powerful. It allows the sentry gun to fire normally, but makes it harder for enemies to damage it since they can only see part of the sentry gun's hitbox.
Yeah, it's so crafty, man.
Higher the level of the sentry gun, the
This is why Dane's the best in the world at being an NG.
higher off the ground the barrels
I
get, so
think.
that means you can hide more of the gun behind the ledge while still allowing it to fire normally. And the last thing to look at,
Yeah, but that's sort of that's not fully accurate, right? Because if you have a larger hitbox means that if you hide 80% of that larger hitbox, there will be more area hidden. But that doesn't mean the gun is safer, because that remaining 20% that's exposed is also larger.
about a sentry gun is the redeploy time. When moving that gear up, sometimes you'll meet an undesirable player and be forced to set down your sentry gun and let it do the killing for you. In this case, the lower the level, the faster your gun will be able to start firing. When a gun is redeployed, it has to go through an unskippable animation of upgrading from level 1 to level 2, and from level 2 to level 3 before it can start shooting.
Interesting. So I feel like he's starting to make a case that the level 2 is actually the best sentry gun.
This is the biggest difference between a level 2 and a level 3 sentry gun, especially if you're using a wrench to play aggressively and are constantly moving your sentry from one area to the next. Each upgrade animation takes about 1 second, and it cannot be sped up by hitting your gun with the wrench, which can be devastating if you need your sentry gun to be doing the damage as soon as possible.
Yeah, so this is actually illustrating a really important point in real warfare, and this is the deployment time. The idea, so in warfare, speed can be decisive, and not just individually like, oh, do I get the drop on my enemy? But the speed of warfare at large. In World War I, the fact that the German military could deploy its troops weeks before Russia could field the same amount meant that their entire plan for victory hinged on literally attacking their neighbor France, destroying them, and then turning around and moving those troops to face Russia before Russia could even bring its forces to bear. And that is a function of technology. The same thing applies in modern warfare. Again, you think about how long it takes to get an aircraft on station, right? If you can, or call a medevac helicopter, as you can get those times lower and lower and lower, right? They are going to become more and more decisive on the battlefield because they can arrive at the time where they're needed. Again, if your artillery runs out of rounds, it doesn't matter that rounds will be available next week. They're needed in the battle today. And so the trade-off that you always have to make as a military is to say, what is good enough that can get to the battlefield today? And this is actually, I think, something that the US military has done a really poor job of, because so many of their vehicles have extremely precise and extremely high technology, but the trade-off is that technology, oftentimes it can't be maintained at all by the military itself. Oftentimes they have to be maintained by specialized contractors who are not subject to the same level of military regulations. And so you might have an aircraft whose avionics are so sensitive that when they go out, the only person who can fix it is a factory in Nebraska and a handful of high-level technicians that can fix those parts. So the trade-off is that it means that the deployability of these modern machines can take a huge hit. This is one of the reasons why for years, decades actually, the US Marine Corps has had a fixation on what it calls VTOLs. Those are are aircraft, usually fighter aircraft, with a vertical takeoff and landing. That is the ability to not just take off somewhere without a runway, but to land there as well. It means that if Marines can secure a beachhead of only a few hundred yards potentially, that they can land an aircraft that can then be refueled, rearmed, and fly off and continue to support those Marines on the ground. The trade-off is that they are often slow, they often have limited air-to-air capacity. The idea that you can have this fighter aircraft support with you, even if it's a mediocre to bad fighter aircraft, or, you know, what do they call them, multi-roles? If you can have a multi-role with you on the battlefield when you need it, is worth so much more than having the ultimate high-tech aircraft on, but it can't get to the battlefield in time.
A level 1 sentry gun doesn't have to go through the upgrade animation, so it can start firing as soon as it's done building. A level 2 has to go through the animation once, and a level 3 has to go through the animation twice. This means you'll have to wait an extra 2 seconds before your level 3 sentry gun can start firing. A lot of things can happen in 2 seconds. A scout could easily unload his entire clip into the gun at point-blank range. A demo man could place more than enough stickies underneath it, and worst of all, you'll be very vulnerable with no sentry gun to help you for an entire 2 seconds, and it's pretty easy to die in 2 seconds. So the higher level the gun, the longer it takes to start shooting after you place it down, which can matter a lot. Generally, if you have a level 3 or even a level 2 gun in hand, it's better to be more passive about how far away from an enemy you place it down. So overall, the difference between using a level 2 and a level 3 sentry gun comes down to your situational preference. Some things are good about using a level 2, and some things are good about using a level 3. As we just went over, there are 4 basic categories of stats that you need to look at when comparing the two: DPS, health, height, and speed. And to put it all in a nice little box of information, I made a pros and cons list for level 2s and level 3s for you. Ain't I nice? There are also a few extra points to be made that didn't fall into the 4 categories, and that includes the fact that it takes an extra 200 metal to get from level 2 to level 3. That 200 metal could...
Like we talked about, that deployability resources. At the end of the day, if your goal is to deploy a level 3 sentry, it is going to take longer. You're going to have to do more runs. You're going to need to get more metal than if you want to deploy a level 2. And as we've discussed, a level 3 sentry that shows up after you need it is not as good as a level 2 sentry that shows up when you need it.
Could either be hard to come by, or maybe you're getting better value out of just using that 200 metal to build another building, or use it to repair the damage on your current level 2 sentry. It's also worth noting that you can't Wrangler jump with a level 2, which could be worth it if you enjoy placing your sentry in hard to reach places, or soaring to heights where no engineer belongs. Ooh!
Okay, that is a pretty cool clip.
Ooh, Barracuda!
Oh no, a copyrighted music, my nemesis! No! Please don't tell.
Anyway, thanks so much for watching as usual, and I will bye to your nieces and next time's nephew. Talk.
Guys, thank you for joining me.
Level 3 Sentry. Can you...
Alright, let's see.
UncleDane, I don't know difference between level 2 Sentry and level 3 Sentry. Can you help me, please?
Shout out to the one fish that's been loaded improperly into the rocket pod.
Fuck am I...
That was a good one, man. That was really informative, actually. That was a great analysis of a level 2 and level 3. I just assumed that level 3 was just objectively better. But in fact, based on what he assessed, it may not be. So guys, if there's other UncleDane videos you want me to check out, man, let me know in those comments. And until next time, I'll see you guys later.